What sport should be in the Olympics but isn't? Advocate Saint said, will there ever be a pancreationist as legendary as Hitchin, who in 564 BC managed to defeat an opponent after pulling a move that resulted in his own death? Advocate Saint said, will there ever be a pancreationist as legendary as Hitchin, who in 564 BC managed to defeat an opponent after pulling a move that resulted in his own death? Hacker Karamer said, if we figured out how to manufacture large ropes out of graphene ribbons, which have tensile strengths over 10 times higher than existing materials, we could theoretically support a tug-of-war between teams of up to 100,000 players each. Such a rope would be over 200 miles long, and could stretch from New York to Washington. Sausages said, I had a weird dream that one of the events was people in wheelchairs going down a steep ramp, and hitting an angle jump that made them barrel roll. They had to dunk a basketball while mid-roll. I'm not sure how the scoring works, but that won. Gold and Diamond said, squash, without a doubt. An extremely popular worldwide sport. Popular with both men and women. The top 50 players for both men and women come from almost every region in the world. Definitely Egypt heavy, but top players come from Peru, Colombia, France, England, Scotland, Wales, Australia, Hong Kong, Malaysia, India, Pakistan, New Zealand, Mexico, Canada, the US, and multiple other countries. Fast-paced and easy to televise. Okay, trading 20 rails in a row might not be that interesting to the new viewer, but how exciting is a 1,500 m swim or a two-person row? Skill and experience can match up well with youth and energy, so an older squash player could still beat a younger inexperienced one. Grays81 said, I consistently played squash for about 2 years 1-2 times a week from a complete beginner level. The guy I played was a decent player, and after those 2 years we were fairly consistent in him or myself winning equally. I got a chance to play a friend of my sister's who taught squash. I knew I still weren't that great, but to get better you've got to play higher skilled people. He owned me badly. He put me anywhere on the court he wanted. It was an amazing experience, seeing the levels in the game. 4-2 and New said, listening to a child in the 4-7 age range tell a story. Whoever goes the longest without waving their hands to speed up the story wins the gold. Edit, because God forbid someone make a typo that gets auto-corrected to the wrong damn word. But by all means, please continue to fill up my inbox with your pompous messages belittling a stranger for a simple mistake. The Power of 3 said, my grandmother does this, except she never circles back to a point at the end. She just meanders off into the wilds. Like, instead of saying anyway, she got a new car, she'd go off on a tangent about where Nancy liked to hike, and how there used to be an Arby's by the trailhead but it closed in 2004, or was it 2005? It had to be 2004 because it was before Kevin moved to Springfield. Do you remember Kevin? You must have been about 4 when you met him? At your second cousin's birthday party? He lives in Dubois now, but at the time he was just moving to Springfield. It was because of his job, wasn't it? Or maybe it was his wife's job. I can't remember, it was so long ago. What did she do again? A dental hygienist, I think. Anyway, they moved to Dubois after Springfield. That would have been couldn't have been later than 2012. I remember I wasn't able to make it to their going away party because we were in Europe at the time, so it had to be before 2012. We stayed in a cute little villa in Santorini, you see. I got your mommy's plates from there, remember? They had those blue flowers on them. From a little shop just down the street. And I told the guy I wanted a gift, and he wanted to recommend this little ceramic figurine, but I saw those plates and I just thought those would be perfect for Denise, so I got the plates instead. I actually got 2 sets, one for your mother, and the other for my friend Caitlin. You wouldn't know her, we went to high school together, she was on the chess team, was dating Bobby Stindale. She won a state title in her junior year, see back in those days you had to. And I'm just like, what does any of this have to do with Nancy? Throwaway for our Ping said, my mother was a nurse for 35 years, and she does something similarly annoying. She doesn't share information, she gives report. She starts at the very beginning, and then goes through every event that happened, no matter how trivial or inconsequential, in chronological order. I'm sure it's great in a medical setting, but it can be infuriating at times. Me, did you find that brand of frozen meatballs you wanted to try? Her, oh, well, the weather was pretty rainy on the drive over, so I had to put my windshield wipers on, and then it took forever to find a parking space. Once I got into the store, I headed over to the bakery department first, because I wanted to see if they had those muffins I liked again. 30 minutes later. Her, and then when I finally got to the frozen food aisle, the meatballs were right where I expected to find them. Me, so. Yes. The answer is yes, you did find them. And if you think a trip to the supermarket is bad, imagine when she's describing how long it took for the ambulance to show up after a relative was in a bad car accident. I now just interrupt her at the very beginning and tell her that I will be very angry with her if the story ends with anyone dead and she didn't just lead with that. It has not changed the ways she tells stories in the slightest. Krantz Monkey said. Obstacle course racing. A technical trail race interspersed with various obstacles testing speed, strength, and technique. Everything from monkey bars and multi-grip rigs to heavy carries. Basically, Spartan race with better standardization. The sport is getting there, but hopefully it'll make the Olympics sooner rather than later. Edit, to provide more information and to answer some recurring questions popping up in the comments. OCR was recently adopted under the auspices of USA Pentathlon Multisport. So while the future of OCR as a potential Olympic event is unclear, there are at least some in positions of power who see the potential there. We then turn to the IOC, who apparently has a number of factors for considering new sports to add, including, according to an NPR article I just Googled. 1. How much value the sport would add to the Olympics legacy. 2. How long the sport has existed. 3. How popular the sport is in the host country. And 4. How much it would cost to broadcast the events. Very few sports, in my opinion, would bring us back to the origins of the Olympics more than a good OCR, other than naked wrestling, of course. And it would certainly be reasonably inexpensive to broadcast, considering how well it is done just on Instagram these days by race companies and bloggers with just a phone and, sometimes, a gimbal. Krantz Monkey said. Standardization would be important, but that shouldn't be too difficult. Either pick one distance or offer events at multiple distances. For example, Spartan races traditionally are at the 5K/10K/21K distances, and the Obstacle Course Racing World Championships run at 3K and 15K distances. As an Olympic event, it could even draw inspiration from some of the existing races, possibly allowing different race brands to contribute a signature obstacle to the course. It would certainly benefit Spartan, for example, if people want to try their twister obstacle just like they saw in the Olympics. Considering the popularity of the sport in the host country, the 2028 Games in Los Angeles isn't a huge stretch. It's at its most popular already in America, and Spartan runs events at every distance within a few hundred miles of Los Angeles, suggesting that the venues are already there. So you've already got the makings of an exciting new event. And at the moment, there's decent parity across the world in the sport. The best Malay athlete on the international circuit is a Brit named John Albon. In North America, the top man and woman are arguably a married Canadian couple, Ryan Atkins and Lindsay Webster. Next best female is Nicole Miracle, an American who had started truly dominating, only to blow out her knee a few months ago. So there's legitimate international talent already as well, making for an even more exciting event. For people comparing OCR to steeplechase, that's like comparing World War II to the air rifle event. And while Ninja Warrior is great, I have multiple friends who have competed on the show and was even a course tester myself. That's not what I'm going for here. This is a better example. Deeble said. Not up, but maybe it is the same idea. I have seen this at a sport event location here in Germany. A small indoor soccer field, 2 sides, each side has 2 obstacles to use as cover, bubble ball soccer thingies. You use simple beginner recurve bows and LARP, live action role play, arrows with a soft round dip, plus protective face mask. That you don't have during LARP, LOL. Arrows are limited and disturbed on the center line. Players start at the far end of their field. At the start of the round, players run to the center, trying to gather as many arrows as they can for their team and may start shooting the other team. Arrows may be distributed among the team. Arrows that land on your team's side after shooting may be picked up. Hit players have to go to an out zone near the field. Players may join again if an arrow is caught by another player of their team using their hands. It is hard but possible as the bows are not very strong and the arrows slow. The team without prayers left loses the round. As an recurve archer I can tell it is quite fun, but can be learned by non-archers really quick. It is more about the running and reflexes. Very much like dodgeball. It is fun but I am not sure if the complexity would be interesting enough for someone watching. Rodiaquanorgasm said. The problem becomes making the massive event even bigger. It's not just adding a sport. For each event you have to add in athletes, 50 or more just for individual sports, plus coaches and support staff. You have to feed and house these people. You have to find an event venue and you have to secure the venue. You have to get staff for that venue, scoring systems established, translators, Olympic branding. Just a small event is still a massive undertaking on an Olympic scale. You can't just run down to the ultimate frisbee course at the local college and have a match. And on top of all that you have to raise the funds to bribe the IOC to get them to allow the event. Sprinkles Fancy 5074 said. Every Olympic sport should include one random average Joe person in it, just for comparison, so we can see how much better the actual Olympians are. The average Joe will be picked at random from the spectators, with a few caveat requirements to be eligible. 1. Must have never played this sport at a competitive level. For example, people who are watching that sport because they used to play will not be eligible. 2. Must be physically healthy enough to compete without serious risk of death injury. For example, not throwing a morbidly obese person into the 100-meter hurdles. 3. For more dangerous sports, must have a basic skill level for safety. For example, for swimming sports, average Joe must at least be able to swim. For equestrian sports, average Joe must know the basics of safety around horses and at least the basics of how to handle a horse. Roltistadem said. Disc golf is super fun to watch. It just has not taken off much outside of the US. Check out stuff like Jamas Pro on YouTube. They have full events on there and they are much more fun to watch than you'd think. I'd love to see it get in spot in like 10-20 years if it takes off more around the world. I think the major issue right now is there would not be many countries that could field a team because it's not really big all over the world. So more realistically maybe like rally racing would be cool at the Olympics. That sport is more international and would have more of a chance of actually getting a spot. I think it may be logistics holding back a lot of the racing stuff from getting into the Olympics though. Kachevnikov said. A lot of existing sports simply need to be expanded. Take road cycling. Depending on the course that is selected, it basically eliminates 2/3 RDS of cyclists from contention. They choose a mountain course like this year, and the sprinters have no chance and didn't even come, while the punchers have little chance. So make the road race have 3 endpoints where the first across the line gets a gold medal. At KM 100, you have a flat sprint, winner gets a gold. Then for the next 50 kilometers you have some short steep hills with another finish at KM 150 up a short steep hill which awards a gold medal. Then at KM 200 you end on the top of a mountain for another gold medal. The way it makes it worth it for every type of road cyclist to come to the Olympics. Plus you can do it all in one race. Next there's triathlon which is Olympic distance and then the mixed relay. But what about other distances? Why not have a sprint triathlon, half Ironman, and Ironman distances? Swimming has 8,000 different distances, but then some sports only get one event. Doesn't make sense. And for running, 5 kilometers and 10 kilometers should be cross-country events. Running those distances around a track is mind-numbing. Madden Captain said. I was walking my super aggressive very large dog, muzzled in on 2 leads, through the woods off trail in an effort to avoid people. All of a sudden, people started jumping through bushes and running towards us. My dog went mental and I thought he was going to eat somebody. It turns out there was some kind of orienteering race event going on that wasn't publicized to local park users, so I had no idea. I was such an anxious mess by the time we made it home that I needed a stuffed drink to cry. Duckbill Marriage said. I'd honestly love to see marching band DCI in the Olympics. Not everyone considers it a sport, but by definition, it is, so argue with your mom. It'd be an amazing way to start the Summer Olympics and to showcase each country's culture. I wouldn't regulate technique because different cultures march differently. Maybe just use it as an exhibition. Regardless, I'd love to see it. Tofif 123 said. If running, Swimming and gymnastics get like 30 competitions apiece. How does soccer and basketball get a combined total of 3 events per gender? Phelps got like 8 golds in one Olympics because of swimming, but the best soccer player in the world can get at most 1, and it's not even an individual achievement. The greatest Olympic athlete can only ever be runners, swimmers and gymnasts because they can compete in multiple highly related events. Why can't basketball players compete in dunk contest, 3-point competitions, foul shooting, trick shots and half-full court shots? Running events are the same thing, just different distances. Shooting a basketball from different distances can be 4 events easily, not even counting dunks. Swimmers get competitions for each type of stroke, but basketball players don't get competition for each style of shot, hooks, floaters, granny style, jump shot, they can lay up. Pun intended. I know an event has to be played in X amount of countries to qualify, but any country with regular basketball literally has all these events as well. Double Den Den said. Tag. At the end of the Olympics, every player draws random numbers and a certain number are it. The rest have to use whatever tricks their chosen sports entail them to avoid being tagged. The field is the hosting city and its surrounding area. The catch is you can't get in a vehicle or leave town unless it's an emergency. You also can't disguise yourself either. Every 30 minutes your location is made public to the players, so you can't go hiding in a mall bathroom stall until it's all over. Sardocker022 said. I think an esport in the pentathlon style would be great. I wish this already existed in the esport realm. A team of 5 players must compete across multiple established esport games with the same players, 5v5 CS, then Dota LOL, then Overwatch 2. Figure out a format for Rocket League and StarCraft. Probably a series of mini tournaments of 3v3, 2v2, and 1v1 with the teams deciding how to allocate players in each format. As games die off or new games come into existence, they could change them around. Figure out a fair scoring format for each game, and whoever has the most points at the end gets 1 ST/2 ND third. Shively 33,792 said. Dating applications will be fierce on confidence and certainty. In the event that you have no matches or terrible outcomes that are not on the grounds that you're revolting or a major issue with your life. A dating application is very shallow and individuals will put together their choices essentially with respect to looks, no character, correspondence, or authority, nothing. You should be a supermodel. On the off chance that not, it's very the primary motivation behind why you not getting any matches. Based Lanched 14 said. Although I'd like to watch American football without helmets or pads. God, I hate all this pads versus no pads stick measuring between football and rugby. The games are fundamentally different. The stoppages in football allow everyone to pause and get into position, then accelerate to maximum speed before each impact. This is far, far different than rugby, where very broadly speaking a large herd of people travel up and down the field together. And if you know anything at all about the NFL, you're well aware that the players are barely able to complete a 16-game season. That isn't because they aren't tough enough. That's because parts of the human body regularly tear and fracture. It doesn't matter how tough you are when your ACL is in 2. Abishad said. If you're familiar with freestyle, folk style looks almost identical on the feet. Once there is a takedown, the bottom guy is constantly working for either an escape or a reversal, while the top guy is not only trying to get a pin near fall points but has to do everything to hold him down. They do not get reset in neutral position. Top guy cannot lock hands because that makes holding the guy down way easier, I guess. Gut wrench leg laces aren't used because to get back points their shoulders have to be near touching for a 2+ count, counted by the ref. In America, preschool all the way up through college, folk style is a traditional school sport, while less common than basketball, football, but I guess plus 85% of schools have a wrestling program. Greco and freestyle are more elite and basically are sought out outside of the traditional means, school. I respect the other styles, but when I first saw freestyle I thought it only looks like real wrestling in neutral position because the bottom guy isn't doing any offense. My argument for why it's real is, imagine you have to wrestle the bad guy until the cops come. It's going to look like a folk style match once you have him on the ground. He is trying to get away and you're trying to keep him down. Yeah, it's silly, but there you have it. Go 2000 said. I would love to see barebow archery. I've been training for 3 years and I'm curious to see how good those Olympic archer would be if they had to do it without any of the tools they've got. Just give them a 50-pound recurve bow, some arrows of the right length, an arm guard, and a reinforced glove. That's it. Nothing that isn't necessary to shoot the bow and get a good shot. Technically you don't need the glove and arm guard either, but your hands will hurt like shit afterwards, so I left them in. A pigeon said, "Once, while staying overnight in a hotel in BFE, Texas, I watched one of those collegiate lumberjack competitions, timber sports, I think they called it. It was enthralling. They should add all of those events. You get knife throwing, big fuck-off log chopping with wicked sharp axes, this thing where you chop a notch in a standing pole so you can wedge a board in it to stand on while you chop a higher notch, chainsaw shenanigans, it's awesome." TV Dinner 123 said, "I drove by my local fire station the other day and saw 2 teams, each with their own fire hose attached to their respective fire trucks. Between the 2 teams was a milk crate and the firemen on each side were playing kinda like a reverse tug-of-war, trying to move the milk crate past the other team by spraying it with the fire hose. Firemen were lined up on each side cheering, the lights from the fire trucks were on, and I would absolutely love to see this in the 2024 Olympics." Dirtman81 said, "Disc golf. The sport is growing very fast. Watching the discs fly is far more appealing to new fans than a little white speck on your TV screen with ball golf. Beyond that, they are effectively the same sport. Downhill mountain bike racing and enduro mountain bike racing. Both are extremely popular around the world, maybe more so than XC racing, which has been in the Olympics since 1996. If we have every conceivable type of skiing in the Winter Games, there should be the big 3 of mountain bike racing in the Summer Games." Natarabatindisco6 said, "I am a firm believer that there should be a separate steroid Olympics where you can see the human body truly pushed to its limit. Any performance-enhancing drugs are encouraged. I also believe that baseball teams should spin a wheel of misfortune before each game and be forced to take whatever random drug the wheel happens to land on. Would love to see the NY White Sox on bath salts playing the Toronto Blue Jays on meth." Vulcan Hobo said, "Squash, cricket, kabaddi, longbow, archery. I want to see all of these. But I think it's nuts that we don't have field hockey in the Olympics. All these sports are sports that would be open to non-Western countries participating in and doing well, which is something we need more of. People wonder why the Olympics is losing viewership? Maybe try inclusion of sports popular in countries with massive populations where they actually have a chance to compete and dominate." Mrai Leithert said, "Finland is the land of silly games, so got to represent that cultural legacy. Thus I suggest 2 of the more known ones. Wife carrying, boot throwing. Both pretty self-explanatory. Wife carrying is a pair sport where the pair has to compete against others on a short course. One of them has to be carried by the other. Style is free. So kinda like running, but with an extra person thrown in the mix. Boot throwing is essentially same as javelin, discus, shot put, etc. You have an object, get hit as far as can. But in this case the item is a rubber boot." Chief Awesome said, "For those who know what gaga ball is, that sport is so much fun. For those that don't know, it's basically free-for-all dodgeball in a pit of walls, in a hexagon. The walls are maybe 2 feet high. The only place you can touch the ball is with your hands, anything else and you're out. Also, if you hit it out of the pit you're out, last to touch it. If you touch it twice without it having touched anything else first, a wall, another person, that's called a double touch, and you're out. You can use the walls to dodge, but you can't camp up there, it's not an ideal strategy anyway. There are no turns, and you can do whatever you want within those rules of not getting out." Yay okay said, "My answer is not as wild or insightful as others, but cricket. Speaking strictly from the national selfishness thought process. India is huge about cricket, and we naturally churn out great players. We have one of the best teams and would definitely bring home medals every year. Some people have been trying to get it enrolled into the Olympics, but the country's cricket association wants the sport not to flourish, as it would lead to distributed global cricket ad revenues, which now is almost entirely enjoys by itself.